Yeah, that's such great advice. I love that this episode is kind of turning into like how to calm yourself down during the real exam because that's a huge
That's
part.
that's what you need.
That's what you need. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Seven Sage Podcast. I'm Zishan. That's Bailey. Today, we're talking about retaking the LSAT and what happens when you take the LSAT and you get your score back and it's lower than you had hoped for. Bailey, you want to start us off? Did that happen to you? Did you take an LSAT, get your score back, and feel unhappy? Did that happen once upon a time?
Well, yes, it happened thrice upon a time. So don't you
Oh,
worry.
wow.
We're gonna, yeah. Did you know that? I took the test 4 times. I did not like my score
Four.
3 out of those 4 times.
Okay, so
So,
you've got some experience. I took it three, so we're both in a
okay.
multiple retake. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, we have good people to be asking about this. Yeah, I always felt like when I was studying and I was thinking about retaking, I was just so scared to even bring that situation to anybody because I felt so imposter syndrome. I felt so, oh no, I'm out of my wheelhouse here. Like, I don't know why I thought nobody was retaking this test. I just heard from my small sample of friends that like some people took it, got their score, liked it first try, and didn't have to worry about it afterwards. And I was jealous. I was embarrassed. I didn't want to talk about it. We can talk about it. It's all good. We got some people that are on the other side of this thing now, me and Zishan, who can give you guys the advice to keep on going.
Yeah, I think I was in a similar boat where I just, wasn't fully prepared and I thought I'll give the test a shot and, obviously it didn't go it's like it's not like I think very few people have like an amazing test day where they like outperform all their practice tests. Um
Yeah, it
and
didn't happen
then
to me.
Right. And then I came back, I studied harder for the test, and then I did see a significant improvement, but I was still under where I wanted to be. And it wasn't until that third time that I finally got to it. So, yeah, I guess where should we start the conversation? Maybe so like let's put yourself in the shoes of someone. They just got their score back. Say they took a recent test, they got their score back, they're not happy. What do you say? First thing, what should they be thinking? What should they be doing? What first thing?
First thing. This is a lot of pressure. I mean, honestly, it's like your feelings are so valid. You're gonna be disappointed. You're gonna, feel that drop in your chest. You're gonna be like, I thought I was going to be released from these months of studying. I thought that I was going to be able to be so satisfied and, justified in having put all of this hours into this. And you feel really let down maybe by yourself. Maybe you feel embarrassed. Maybe you feel just sad. Feel all those things. Like those are valid feelings. Don't let anybody tell you that you don't have time to feel that and then just, keep on moving. Feel the things and then remind yourself that you can't change the past. That is the thing that helps me the most. I mean, it's still annoying, right? Like there's not like oh my gosh, what's the word? Switch that I can flip in my brain that just turns off my regret for whatever it is. But you can't change the past. You can only do the next right thing. So when you're ready, maybe in a week or two, depending on when you're trying to take the next test, get back in the study situation. I don't know, get back studying and we'll talk about how to change your studying when you're getting back into it. But I think it's really just a matter of like allowing yourself to feel those valid feelings and then remind yourself that this isn't the end. You have this power to change your score and all that you need to do is pick yourself back up and do the next right thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful, empathetic advice. I would say maybe one important thing to add is that y- your score is not you, and you're not branded with it. And also, we're not admissions people, but multiple LSAT takes is becoming more and more the norm. And just because you have one bad score on your record, should not preclude you from your dream school. There are many people who get into the very top law schools after having taken the LSAT multiple times. Again, I'm not an admissions expert, but I do know that retaking the test is a good idea and getting the highest score you possibly can is a good idea. And you shouldn't not retake the test just because you think retakes looks worse, right? Getting a higher score is better than having a lower score and fewer takes. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Oh,
So
absolutely. And I wish I
all,
knew that. I kept Googling and re-Googling, like, do law schools average your score? And you get some like blog posts from 2003 that tell you that law schools average your score. But no, we're here to say, and again, we're not admissions professionals, but we're here to say that that does not happen anymore, at least for American law schools. They are looking at, I mean, they look at all of your scores, they can see all of them, but for the most part, they care about your highest score because that's the one that they have to report.
Yeah, and I'll testify from my own experience that I took the LSAT 3 times, and I did get into law school, and I got into some great law schools. So just among the T14 as well. So if anyone's worried out there, just know that the retakes I don't think are the thing that'll hold you back. I think a low score can hold you back, but a retake I think is not that bad. And maybe that leads into the next topic, which is okay. Now you've taken a breath, you've accepted that you got a bad score or a score you didn't like, and you're going to recommit yourself to studying to try to get your dream score. Bailey, how do you do it? What do you change? What do you assess? What could possibly be going wrong? Maybe a million things, but what do we
Right.
do? Yeah.
Okay, so one thing is that I think some people, pick themselves back up and start to retake because they got a score that they didn't love, but it was right around where they were averaging their practice tests. Some people, though, or like are trying to retake on a score that was a lot lower, or even just like a little bit lower than their average of their practice tests. And so, if you're in the second boat where you just feel like you kind of underperform based on where you were practice testing consistently, my very first piece of advice is to do a little bit of reflection of anything that could have been different or extra on test day. Because that's what happened to me throughout the 4 times. I don't know if I was that consistent with my PT average, but I got around 6 or 7 points lower than what I was scoring already. And I was like, what in the world? I got mad at the practice test in the first place. I was like, are those even accurate? I felt like the real test felt so much harder. But no, trust me, they're accurate. It's all normal. I mean, the
That's a
higher the
good
number
point.
practice test,
Everybody always on Reddit or wherever, they always talk about how the
I
test that
love
just
that.
happened was the hardest LSAT of all time. Here's the thing. They're not getting harder. The one you took wasn't harder than average. It's just you were probably nervous, right? And you probably panicked and but and everybody always says that about every test that, oh man, this one was so hard.
Right.
So
And
just
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
maybe they're marginally harder by like, one little tiny bit of it. Like a word was a lot harder to interpret, for example, on a question, but it's not like that. Like the practice test, if you can get it on a practice test, you can get it on the real thing. So what you need to do is just do some reflection. Anything different or extra on test day. I try to separate it into like internal and external categories. Anything about the testing environment or the proctor, or, anything that could have gone wrong logistically that maybe threw you off mentally. Anything that you did internally where you just kind of psyched yourself out, or I don't know, like for me, this is so silly, but I realized that I had been studying with my AirPods the whole time, like noise canceling headphones. I was really, really specific about just making sure that I couldn't even hear a pin drop in the background. And then, of course, when you take the test online, you can't use AirPods of like, cause I don't know, somebody could be whispering in your ear. Can't do that. So what they make you do is have these generic foam earplugs if you want to use noise canceling. I use those because I was so nervous about hearing a pin drop, and those really mess with me. Like I just kept fiddling with them the whole entire test. Such a silly thing that was different or extra on test day, but I think it threw me off a good amount to the extent that I started changing my strategies. Like what happens to us is when time starts ticking, you're freaking out, the good tried and true strategies that you know and love and you rely on to get the right answers, they go out the window. And we don't want to do that. Like, I think I started not eliminating 4 answer choices, just choosing whichever one looked the best, not actually paying attention to cross elimination as well as positive support. I don't know. There's any other number of things, like even just not reading carefully. I wouldn't be pausing every couple words and translating my own words. I would be panic skim reading the entire passage, and that's not going to set you up for success in those answer choices. So as soon as I went through that first step of reflection, I got really honest with myself of just like, okay, something had to change on test day. Let's figure out what it was. That can help you inform what you want to be doing in your future studying, because you want to be combating against any of those little things that might go different on test day and making it so that there's just nothing that could throw you off.
Wow, yeah, that was so much wisdom. And I think what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is like simulate the practice testing environment to be like test day as close as possible. You're not allowed headphones, so don't study with headphones. And on test day, it sounds so simple, but you're right. People don't do this. I didn't do this on my first take. Like, use the strategies you used when you were practice testing. Like, if you read slowly and carefully, bring that to test day. I remember that I would read slowly and carefully when I did practice tests. And then when the real thing happened, I was like, panic, rush, skim. and you just change somehow the real thing makes you panic enough to where you forget all your good strategies that were working for you. And I think you hit the nail on the head by naming that. So yeah, make the practice like the real test, and make the real test feel like the practice. That's kind of what you said. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful lesson.
I mean, looking back on it now, like both of us being on the other side of this thing, I'm sure you also feel the same. My last test, that was the only one that felt like just another practice test. The pressure was off for myself. I was like, you know what? I've just done this so many times at this point. There's nothing that can throw at me to throw me off. And I know that I'm going to use the exact same strategies. I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to take it like taking another practice test, the same practice test I took last week. And that changed everything. As soon as I walked away from that test, I was like, yep, I got my 175 plus score that I was wanting. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I knew that I got it at that point. Whereas before I was like, ooh, I don't know, it's a toss up. I kind of blacked out for the whole exam. I don't remember anything. Whereas that last one, it was like, no, I know how I did.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm not gonna lie. I still panicked on my last official test a
No,
little bit,
that's okay. That's okay.
but yeah,
That's
it's
normal.
okay. I think I was able to regroup. I was able to take a deep breath, and I was able to say, "Hey, I know how to do this. I'm going to stick to the strategy I know." And when I walked out of it, I didn't feel great. But here's the thing: you don't have to feel great, and you can still do quite well. And that's what happened
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, it
Yeah.
surprised
So
you. That's good. Well, and that's good to get both those perspectives too, because that like what we don't want to be doing is like you hear me and saying, "Hey, I felt really good about my last test," and then somebody listening goes into their next test, they don't feel that good about it. Doesn't mean that you should just write off that you're never going to get the score that you wanted on that test. No, it's really, really hard to gauge your performance on the LSAT. It is just one of the most difficult things, especially going into a real test day when you can't just press submit and see your score right away afterwards. So
right. Well, you shouldn't. You should blind review first anyway,
true,
before
true, true, true.
you know what I'm
You
saying.
press submit right
Yeah.
after blind review. Very good point.
After blind review, then you can see your score. Yeah. 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 I mean, I
True.
guess it kind of depends. Like, are you a chiller like Bailey? Are you a panicker like Zishan? Either.
I'm not. I'm not. No,
Like,
that's funny. I was just more chill by the end of this thing, but you guys, I studied for a year and a half. Like at that point, I was just so in LSAT brain mode that it was just pretty chill by the end of it. But no, trust me, I have a raging, I'm like a ball of anxiety. So had to retrain that. Really quick tip for anxiety during the test. What you mentioned was just taking a deep breath. I think it is so underrated to like devote 10, 15 seconds. I know that seems scary because you're like, I don't even have 10 seconds to spare. But no, you got 10 seconds to do a little mental reset that's actually going to save you time and wrong answers in the future. Just breathe. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open. 3 seconds in, hold for 3 seconds, 3 seconds out, hold for 3 seconds. Nice little box breath if you would like to. There's other breathing exercises that you can use, but that's one of the easiest ones. Just kind of like come back to yourself. And while I'm doing that mid test, I literally do that mid test. I'm repeating to myself just a quick little here's what you need to do. Like for myself, it's usually your only job is to read the next word in front of you and make a good decision based on it. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Read the next word, make a good decision. That's all that you have to do in this test. And so just kind of like getting all of that heightened anxiety down into just here's your next job. That really helps me practically in the test. And I know it helps a lot of other people. So like don't doubt that 10-second reset isn't gonna make a big difference. It will.
yeah. Yeah. That's such great advice. I love that this episode is kind of turning into like how to calm yourself down during the real exam, because that's a huge part.
That's what you need.
That's what you need. That's a huge part of why the first take or second take doesn't go so well, is I think people have a lot of panic. And maybe one thing I'll say is I did feel a lot more calm walking into test number 2, test number 3. Like you said, it felt like another practice test. The first LSAT is nerve-wracking, and I hope that everybody watching this gets their dream score on their first LSAT. But if you don't, just know that like when you walk into number 2 or number 3, you will automatically feel a little less panicked. So, because you've done it before, you know how it goes. You know that the room scan takes way too long and you're all hyped up on caffeine and you
Right.
feel like you're wasting it. Yeah. So, all that.
That's funny.
I think maybe this is a good point at which we could transition to talking about not just having a bad test day, but when you took the test and you did way worse than you wanted to. Either you underperformed your PTs or your PTs really weren't where you wanted them to be, but you gave the test a go anyway. Now, I guess we're talking about big score jumps, not just test day logistics. Bailey, how do you
Yeah.
make a big score jump?
So yeah, okay, perfect. Bringing it back to this, because that's what I was going to start talking about when we were saying like, okay, how do we get back into studying? First step, reflect on test day, reflect on where you're at. I think a lot of people also get frustrated, by the way, because they can't see which questions they missed on the actual test. They just give you the score. They don't give you, hey, they don't even tell you how many you missed in each section. Like, of course, they're not telling you the individual questions that you missed, but they don't even tell you your section breakdown. And that is frustrating. So my advice is when you're ready to get back into it, take another practice test. That's going to be just as good of a gauge as to where you're at right now as that last or that last actual test was. Maybe it's a little bit of a different score than the actual test. That's okay. Normal variation between practice tests and actual tests, like that happens. And then just use that as your starting point so that you can start to hone in on specific question types, maybe families of questions that you are struggling with a little bit more. And all the more reason in this next leg of studying to really slow down in order to speed up. Maybe you've already gotten to that point. Maybe you've already learned this lesson of like, everybody tries to rush this test. They think that you got to practice timed because it's a time test. But really, what you need to do is dial back to untimed practice and really get to the point where you fully understand the words on the page in front of you. You can make those sound decisions because your mind is clear. You know what you're reading. Takes a lot of practice. That takes a lot of slowing down. So like first, like if you're studying coming back, I would recommend doing a little bit more on time practice, maybe going back to parts of the core curriculum based on those question types that you are struggling with. And then really just making sure that you can start to pull off the scores that you want on full sections and then start adding those together for the full test, like full practice tests weekly. It's also going to be just a lot of wrong answer journaling. That's one of the best ways to slow down and get honest with yourself is just why in the world did I miss this question? How did I talk myself into the wrong answer? How did I talk myself out of the right answer? Why is the
Right.
wrong answer wrong? Why is the right answer right? What am I going to do better next time? I need a specific strategy and a drill set for every missed question so that I can go through and start to implement, like turn my wrongs into rights, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So the prescription really is drilling, blind review, wrong answer journaling. It always
Which
comes
is what
back
we
to
tell everybody to do anything. Anyway,
yeah, this is
yeah, all
the
the more
same advice.
emphasis on
Right,
you just
right.
got to trust the advice. Like this really is how you study for this test.
No, I'm so glad you brought it all back up because one, you gave such a thorough overview, and two, I think it's important for the listeners to just know that hey, what we're preaching is not really anything new or different, but like and this test is not easy, but studying for it is simple. It's the same stuff every single time. You're going to take a practice test. You know, I highly recommend the 7 Sage Analytics if you're a 7 Sage subscriber. The analytics will tell you what kinds of not only what kinds of questions you are missing most often, but what skills you need to learn to answer those questions. And then start practicing those skills and those question types until you develop a mastery. Rinse and repeat, you know, up your difficulty slowly over time. And once you feel like you've gotten something down, take another PT, expose a new weakness, keep going until you have as little weaknesses as possible. And if you're going for a 170s or high 170s score, whatever it is, then you want to make sure you have pretty much no weaknesses. So, you know, the advice, like Bailey said, it's you know, it's the same study method, regardless of who you are or where you are in your journey. You're just gonna like you got to find out what you're bad at and make yourself good at it.
Right?
What else?
Literally.
What more can we say? Yeah.
So deep, so profound. But no, it's true. It's very true. I think people are always looking for like some sort of, I don't know, secret recipe to crack the LSAT. And I'm like, I'm giving it to you. Unfortunately, it just takes time and it takes commitment to the process. And there's a lot of points in that process where you're going to be like, is this worth it? Am I really ever going to improve? I feel like I can't. Like, I feel like I can't retrain my brain to read differently, for example. You totally can. All of us have been there. Everybody who's gotten in the 170s has gone through at least some extent of kind of like unlearning things and relearning new things. And it's so possible. You just got to stick to it. And you got to remind yourself that like you're not giving up for a reason. Maybe you start, I don't know if you're losing motivation at this point too. Some things that helped me was keeping a little sticky note, even of just like why I'm doing this. Like, why do I want to go to law school? What am I committing myself to? Why, like, what's my motivation? What am I getting out of bed every morning for? And then the other silly little thing that I do is let's see if it's up right now. I make my screensaver a picture of myself as a baby. You don't have to do this, but I think it's helpful to just remind yourself, like, This is who I'm doing it for. Little Bailey, little Zishan, little whoever you are. That's exactly who you're doing it for, and making sure that you just like, don't lose that motivation to stick to the process because it's a tedious process. It will be very discouraging.
It's so beautifully said, Bailey. Just staying motivated, thinking about the goal, thinking about your past self and what you want to show your past self in terms of what you can accomplish. This is some pure wisdom coming out. This is some pure therapy coming out of the podcast
I
today.
know. I honestly, and that's what a lot of people need too. Honestly, like I needed it when I was studying for the LSAT. People need LSAT therapy as much as they need advice on how to get to the right answer. And so that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think that is what we're here for. And I think that's mostly what people are struggling with. It's confidence, it's motivation, it's doubt. And you're not going to learn the concepts as well if you're struggling internally. So, if you can do some work up front to sort out the feelings of doubt and the lack of motivation and the lack of confidence, if you can build yourself up, then learning the concepts can be kind of fun. But usually, if you're struggling a lot, maybe there's something deeper going on. And again, I I love the twists and turns that we're taking in this episode. Bailey, thanks to you, I think we've uncovered much more of a deeper idea here around retakes. Speaking of like anxiety, one thing I felt was like, oh, what if I run out of material? What if I burn through all the practice tests? I actually get this question a lot. Would you have advice for someone who's worried about burning through material, especially if they feel like, oh, maybe I have a retake coming up. So should I burn through all the recent practice tests? Because then what am I going to use if I need to retake? I don't know. Did you suffer or struggle with this problem? Yeah.
I'm hopefully a good person to ask for this. I was going to say I'm the best person to ask for this, but who knows? But I
Okay.
fully ran out of material between my third and fourth LSAT and I freaked out. I was like, no, I don't have a single clean PT. I don't have a single clean question, which really was true. I mean, at that point, I had just been studying so long. I did run through a lot of practice tests pretty early on, not knowing what I was doing. So, very first piece of advice, if you literally get there, and then we'll talk about not getting there, but I just want to talk it through. Like, if you get there, you're going to be fine. Very first piece of advice is redo things that you've seen least recently, like full practice tasks, especially like your diagnostic, for example. Chances are you haven't really touched that since your diagnostic, and you also did not know what you were doing when you're doing that. Start with the stuff that you've seen least recently and maybe kind of do an overview of, like this, anything that you've seen. I guess it depends how long your study timeline has been. But if it's been over 6 months, for example, definitely start there. And then really just make sure that you're saving yourself within that chunk of things that you've seen least recently. And also, maybe saving yourself a lot of those newer PTs that perhaps you've seen more recently, but you're going to probably want to redo in some capacity. Just like start there by kind of sectioning them out into, depending on how long you want to keep studying, maybe 5 full practice tests and then other things that you can use for sections and drills. And then beyond that, it's just like when you're redoing something that you've done before, there will probably be a little voice in the back of your head being like, oh, well, you remember this question and you got it wrong before and you're leaning towards this answer. So you should probably just go for the other answer. Squash that voice. I know it's so hard. You can't just turn it on and off, but just be like, hey, I hear you. You're not being helpful though right now. Like that actually doesn't help me get to the right answer. That doesn't help me get better at this test. What I need to focus on is strategy, step-by-step processes that I'm going to reliably follow to consistently get to the right answer. And when I say that when I ran out of tests and it was, or okay, so I'm going to say that when I ran out of tests, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it was like, I literally think that it helped me take that test off the pedestal that I had it on. I was like, oh, every new question has so much power over me. I was so nervous and anxious and I was putting so much pressure on all of that. And then as soon as I started redoing stuff, I was like, oh, sweet, I've seen it all. It doesn't even matter. I don't actually remember the old stuff as much as I thought that I did. And it doesn't matter if I do. This is when I got really serious about strategy and I knew exactly how to teach the test to somebody else, like talk myself into the right answer, talk myself out of the wrong answers. And that's when I was able to pull it all back together for that fourth test. Kind of a long
Yeah.
answer, but does that make
No, no,
sense?
well said. Well said. And I totally agree that like redoing old material is not bad. Actually, I would recommend, even if someone doesn't run out of material, they should save a bank of questions they've done previously or gotten wrong. I had a folder on my desktop of stuff I got wrong previously that I would return to several weeks later and I wouldn't remember the right answer. And even if you do, that's not like that's not the point. The point is you're flexing the muscle or building the muscle of like the process, like you said, over and over again. It's like the strategy, the process. Can I have the right inner monologue of like, I've identified the conclusion and the premises, and I've pre-phrased the gap, etc. Right? If you've got the right process, then whether you remember the question or not, you are still getting something out of that, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, for anybody who's like going back into their studying, a really good ongoing project to start doing is just writing out your own little step-by-step processes for every LR question type, for every RC family of questions, for maybe different passage styles that you start noticing that you're struggling with RC. That's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that I started making myself do. And of course, now I share that in classes. So come to classes if you want more of a framework that you can use for yourself. But really, my students that get the best of this test are the ones that are doing that on their own. They're using the 7 stage framework. They're using our ideas of how to get to the right answer. And then they're putting it into their own words. And they're really getting so good at those processes that they could, I don't know, they could do them with their eyes closed, except you
Cool.
can't do this test with your eyes closed. It's all reading.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like, just learn your process, maybe write them all out, maybe have some standard operating procedures for every LR type. It's not a bad idea. Yeah. Maybe as you get it more advanced, you learn to break your rules sometimes. But when you're starting out, find your footing, right? And if you really want to make a big score jump, it's not a bad idea to start getting very explicit with your reasoning. That way you can identify where you go wrong. So
Right. Yeah. Because if you're walking away from questions and you're just like, I hope I got that right. I really don't know what my reasoning is. Like, I think a lot of people volunteer in class sometimes. They'll be like, okay, I can't really fully explain why I chose this and why I didn't like the other answer choices. Force yourself to just start. Like, you have to start. It's just a muscle that you got to exercise in your brain. Come to classes, volunteer. I'll get it out of you. Like, I will make you articulate exactly why you
yeah,
like the right answer, why
that
you
is
don't like the
true.
wrong answers.
Bailey will
We'll get
get
your
it out of
confidence
you.
up.
Yeah. I
That's
also
what I'm here
love the
for.
the shameless like plug for your own live classes. Like
Just plug
like
your own
come to my
classes.
classes, not Zishan's. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be doing those classes if they weren't good, right? Like, I'm going to be giving you guys the exact advice that I wish that my past self had. And
Yeah.
hopefully that's how everybody's running these classes.
That's fair. I'm just saying, I also want to give a plug for my classes.
Okay, let me plug
You know.
Zishan's classes. I'll plug them too. They're really
Yeah.
good.
Or maybe, we could say, hey, come to Bailey's, come to mine, see who you like, right? Let us know. Let us know.
Pick your fighter. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Quick plug. This is kind of out of place, but I thought of this earlier on, and I want to make sure that we throw it in this episode. When you're working on retraining your brain to just not psych yourself out and have the confidence that you need to pull off that score on test day, a really helpful exercise that I learned like halfway through my studying, kind of made more LSAT by the end of my studying, but I wish that I learned it earlier, is this it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy. I call it this mindset building exercise where before a PT or before something you're freaking out about, maybe it's even just a full section, you're supposed to do a full section every day. You told yourself you're supposed to do a full section every day. And then all of a sudden you get to the section, you're like, things are going to go wrong and I'm going to freak out. I'm going to, fail. Just breathe, take out a sheet of paper, write out all of your worst case scenarios, all of your anxiety. Oh no, this happens and then this will happen. And then I'm going to be a failure. I'll never go to law school. Nobody's ever going to love me. Like, I don't know. Let your brain spiral to the end of whatever your worst case scenario is. And then remind yourself that that is not true. Those are lies. That is your brain telling yourself that you need to, or that you're just going to freak out and it's all going to be the end of the world. You're going to turn that sheet of paper over. You're going to replace each of those lies with a truth. Like, if I get a hard RC section, it's not going to be that I'm going to fail. It's going to be that I'm going to breathe. I'm going to think about those overall passage styles, different forms that those passages can take on. They're actually a lot more chill, a lot more familiar than I am, maybe psyching myself out to believe that the passages are so confusing. And you're going to just do the next right thing. Like, so much of my LSAT advice is like, breathe, can't change the past, but you can always do the next right thing. And so once you walk away from that exercise, you got a whole sheet of paper with all your anxieties on one side and all your truths on the other side. And the more you do this, the more you are just training yourself to really make sure that you are going into the test with that full confidence and you're not going to be psyching yourself out of a bad score.
Excellent point, Bailey. Thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, I think the listeners have a lot to walk away with after this episode, and just getting themselves composed, having the right approach, and having the right inner monologue, and just being healthier overall mentally as they approach this test. So, like, thanks for your wisdom. I think folks have a lot to learn from you, and I'll just say thank you all, viewers, for watching this, for listening. Thanks for coming back every week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and ask us questions in the comments, or email us. If we pick one of your questions to answer on the show, then you get a free month of live subscription through Seven Sage. So please engage with us, ask us questions, and keep coming back. We love talking to you, addressing your questions, your concerns. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you guys. Bye.